Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. We are in the middle of transfer portal season. I was going to say we're in the middle of defensive coordinator hiring season, but that's not actually true. USC just pushes it off for weeks or maybe months. We'll talk about that. And we are in the middle of high school all-star game season, and we've got some stuff to talk about there. Who knows? Lots of stuff going on, in part because we didn't have a show last week, which I apologize for. But look, we thought they were going to hire a defense coordinator any day. So we figured, well, let's just wait. Let's just wait. And then it turns out, no. So I'm not going to do that this week because who knows when Lincoln Riley's going to hire a defensive coordinator or if. Don't know. Guys, let's start with that. Is it time to get nervous? Look, at first, this is 3 weeks ago. It looks like Danton Lynn is flirting with going to Penn State. The way Lincoln Riley was talking about that, the way Danton Lynn was talking about it, you think, yeah, he's probably going to go. You have Pete Kwiatkowski out there who has a fantastic resume, looking for a job. You thought, okay, seamless transition. Lynn goes away, Kwiatkowski comes in. It's an upgrade. That's fantastic. That's not what happened. So now here we are weeks later. There are rumors, but just rumors of a handful of people they've talked to. And I'm going to admit it, I'm nervous. Mark Culkin, let's start with you. Am I right to be nervous about this defensive coordinator hiring? I thought this was going to be easy and exciting, and we're going to get somebody with a track record of putting together top 20 defenses right away. That's what I thought. That's not what I got. What do you think?
Yeah, are you nervous or are you concerned, or am I just splitting a hair there?
Both. I don't know. I'll go both.
Okay, so yeah, look, I don't know why there's a delay right now. Speculation is, well, you can't upset the apple cart, and maybe Pete Kwiatkowski is too old school where he wants to have a say in the matter. He wants to maybe have a say in who is going to be part of his assistant coaching pool, and USC saying, whoa, 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 pump your brakes here. We got Eric Henderson, we got Sean Newell, we got Doug Belk, we got Trovon Reed, we got everything you need. So I don't know if that's the holdup because there's been some talk that, and on our site, wearesc.com, from our insiders that, hey, these specific coaches, they're going to be here next year. So is that playing a role in USC having a difficult time finding an outsider to come in? Or is the plan all along, you know what? Let's just delay, delay, delay. We don't have to worry about any of our players threatening to use the transfer portal and leave, and then just name somebody in-house to be the new defensive coordinator. It seems it's got to be one of those two situations because, as you mentioned, Pete Kwiatkowski, he was sitting outside the gates like a Trojan horse. It's a gift. Take him. There was nobody inside of that thing stepped ready to, to derail the situation. I don't know. For the life of me, I cannot figure out the decision-making process with the powers that be at USC. Am I nervous? No. I like the talent that they're recruiting. I'm a little concerned that it seems like decisions are being made without the person involved who you want to be part of the process. I'm talking in circles, but it looks like that's kind of what USC is doing right now. They're running in circles.
All right, let's play around with this just for a minute because when you bring in the number one overall recruiting class with some, I mean, there's some dudes in that class. We're going to talk about this in a bit, like guys you look at and say, oh, okay, that looks like Pete Carroll, Nick Saban type stuff. There's always this tension between the coaches who are great salesmen and the coaches who can coach. It's nice if you get one who does both, but sometimes you don't have one who does both. You have one that does one or one that does the other. If you have these guys coming in and it's easier than ever to leave, like it's easier to leave a major college football program than it is for me to walk out the front door right there. It's like 7 steps for me. It's like 3 steps for these guys. They I'm just out of here. We're done, right? Okay. So you might worry, that you put this class together with these assistants, and if they go, we're going to have a mutiny and we're going to lose all this work that went into putting together a class. And if you can hold on to them for 3 years, is going to give you elite talent. Okay. Well, let me read some numbers to you, fellas, because I want to get your take on how important it is to hold on to all the assistants that gave you the following. Yards per play last year, 65th in the country. Rush yards per attempt, 82nd in the country. Third down percentage, 82nd in the country. Success rate defensively, that is a measure of whether or not the defense does a good job or a bad job on an individual play. Total success rate last year, USC's defense was 93rd. Passing success rate, 63rd. Rushing success rate, 119th, which basically means you're one of the very crappiest teams in the country at stopping the run. And guys, we talked about this. A big part of that is you had guys who refused or didn't know how to play with fundamentals. And frankly, you had a bunch of guys who were loafing it way too much of the time with that group of assistants. So, Eric McKinney, tell me, how excited should I be about rumors that we're going to hold on to all of the assistant coaches who gave us that?
This feels like a setup. You should be excited all the
Go
time.
ahead.
Be excited all the time. No, no. I mean, that's going to be a very, very hard thing for the USC fan base by and large to get excited about when it's yup, we're gonna run it back with the same players. I get that that's in that line of development, right? We're developmental program, developmental program. We want to get guys in young, want to get their snaps here, have them be comfortable in the system, all of that going through. That's not that could work, right? There's nothing that says no, you'll never win like that. You can't do that. That could work. The step forward from last year to this year doesn't give you a ton of confidence that, oh yeah, they're gonna take off next year. Like all they need is one more year together and then they're gonna be an elite defense. It's going to, again, that sell's gonna be tough for a lot of people. They're gonna get better. The players are gonna get better, right? It was the first season with kind of significant snaps and starts and all of that stuff for a lot of guys. They're going to get better. When you look at what playoff teams are putting on the field on defenses specifically, that's the side of the ball we're talking about. The step forward that USC needs to make to get there this year, 2026, not 27, 28 down the road when everyone's a fifth year senior from this class. It looks too significant to just say same stuff, roll it out there, let's go. That's where it is right now.
Now we're going to talk in a little bit about what we think that means in terms of USC's short and long-term strategy. But Greg, I want to ask you this. When you're Look, we went through the Dante Williams thing because he was a fantastic recruiter and the kids loved him. And then they came to USC and they played like garbage. Right? That's just what happened. That's not even me putting a bad spin on it. That's just what happened. We saw Clay Helton want to hold on to T. Martin. He made him offensive coordinator. So now you had two guys who didn't know how to run an offense in charge, and it didn't work. But T. Martin was a fantastic recruiter, right? You see this all the time. Greg, I'm going to put you on the spot because that's what we're doing today.
Good.
We're
Good.
speaking honestly today. At least
Bring it on. I love it. You know that.
Greg, can this defensive staff of assistants even coach? Because I watch the games, and other than Doug Belk and Trovon Reed, who I think can, I'm not convinced that a single one of them is a worthwhile college assistant coach. Maybe a great salesman. Am I wrong? Please tell me I'm wrong, because I think they're all coming back, and I badly want to be wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think they're caught in a real difficult situation. And that is players can get up and leave. If they don't like it, they're going to go. And it's not like we're in the first or second year of players I'm just going to go. When you look at all of college football and you look at the amount of players that are lost to the portal, players don't need much to sit there and say, I'm out of here. I'm going to go. Now, the first thing to me is you don't want to lose players, even the players they had last year. You just can't do that. Not where SC is right now with the portal and all this sort of stuff. You can't lose them. Players are attached to assistant coaches. They are. And they lose their daddy, so to speak. They're going to look for a new one. And the key is many of the players say, I am only in college playing football because I want to get to the NFL. And whatever it takes for me to get to the NFL, that's where I'll go, whether it's New Mexico or it's Portland State, whatever. That's what they're going to do. So your first thing is we can't lose players. We can't lose the coaches, right? Because it's a domino effect. I think the big question is it's going to be a problem is the status of Lincoln Riley. I wrote a column, my IMFO a Sunday column on what's next for Lincoln Riley. And it basically touched on the fact that you can change assistant coaches, you can change players, but you still have the same head coach. And they've done everything. And the bottom line is getting a defensive coordinator who says, I'm not sure if I go on this staff, whether the guy who's the head coach is going to be there following next year. I mean, halfway through his 10-year contract and still no conference championships, okay, but no playoff appearances really hits home. And that'll affect a lot of things. A lot of players will say, you know what, we're not going to win here. I want to go to the playoff. Whatever the case may be, they'll figure out a way. So no, I think you got to keep the coaches. That's my opinion. If you have a head coach and can get down in it and knows his stuff on defense and things of that nature, he could sit down on during the off season and tell them this is how I want it done. This is what I want to see. But I don't know if that's the case. I'm not in there, so I don't know. Maybe Riley has done that. But I think that the main purpose, and when you see players already going to social media saying who they want as the defensive coordinator, one of the things that should be addressed is the idea that some of these players want to be defensive coordinators, and they have looked at the schools that they wanted to go to or allegedly wanted to go to, and these schools have already hired defensive coordinators. So Eric Henderson is not going to Georgia Tech because they hired somebody, and the others are same thing, which is okay. But are they going to, in the long run, have to hire somebody from within? The problem is Eric Henderson, never been a defensive coordinator to my knowledge. Okay. Probably not a good feeling for Lincoln Riley, that's for sure. Then you
Well, he's got
look,
one game now.
yeah, he's got one game. That's true. He's got one game.
And Doug Belk has some.
And
I
Doug
don't. I
Belk,
mean,
I was just going to say that, right? Doug Belk has some. We don't know. I don't know. The schedule next year is really tough. If they don't make the playoffs after 5 seasons, are these coaches still going to be working for Lincoln Riley, or are they all going to be swept out for a new coach? That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to talk a little bit about next year and what the expectations are, both ours, but more importantly, what we think USC's expectations are for themselves. And I don't think many people are going to like that conversation. But the issue I have is that I think a lot of USC fans, because they want to be positive, I get that. I don't always do it, but I understand it. Like intellectually, I get that that's nuts. They want to be positive, and because frankly, most football fans don't really understand what they're watching. They say, well, these guys are young, they're going to get better. And that's probably true. My concern, though, is that we went through a whole season where guys still weren't playing fundamentally sound at the end of the season either. And there wasn't really tremendous growth in that. It's not like at the beginning of the season, guys were all over the place and didn't know what they're doing. By the end of the season, they were still young and it wasn't perfect, but they seemed to tighten it up. That's just not true. And we had a lot of games where USC played pretty well in the second half and horribly in the first half without there being substantial schematic change. In fact, the coaches said there were none. And the primary difference seemed to be the guys played harder. But I don't know how many weeks in a row you can go where the guys don't seem to play very hard in the first half. And we look at that and say, I'm cool with that coaching staff coming back. I'm not cool with coaching staffs coming back where guys don't play hard pretty consistently, right? I mean, that's like one of the number one things that you expect your coach to do is have guys play hard. And we talked about it in the bowl game where the biggest play of the game, everybody knew it was the biggest play of the game, 3rd and 20 in overtime. And you have 3 guys jogging or walking. So here's my concern. I understand if you have to keep these guys to keep this class together, that's fine. But I wonder whether or not you're making the culture progress that you need to make if Lincoln Riley continues to be Lincoln Riley and he continues to bring back all these guys. Look, Rob Ryan and Eric Henderson were not experienced college coaches. They're NFL guys. And it may very well be that with a year of experience, those guys who both know football may be much better position coaches in year 2 than year 1, right? That's entirely possible. I don't want to discount that. I'm just saying that you look at last year's defense, and Lincoln Riley wants to say they've made big strides. They did not make big strides. They did not. The defense last year was bad. And the benefit, you want to know what the difference is between Grinch's and Danton Lynn's defense last year? Danton Lynn did a better job of not giving up huge plays. He gave up a whole bunch of 8-yard runs over and over and over again. But he did a better job of not giving up. Like Alex Grinch's defense gave up a touchdown in 3 plays pretty consistently. It took 9 or 8 against Danton, which is nice, I guess. But you know what the big difference is? The quarterbacks they faced. Grinch faced Penix, Rising, Nix, Shadur Sanders, and Sam Hartman, among others. That's the difference. That's it. USC played a bunch of crappy offenses last year, and when they played halfway decent offenses, even ones that were pretty one-dimensional, like Notre Dame's, they got steamrolled. They got freaking steamrolled like a Grinch defense did. That's the difference. So I'm not in a mood for pretending that we've made huge strides defensively and we need to stay the course. That ain't true. It's just not. In 2024, you can watch the season and say, that defense played better. They played harder. They're more fundamentally sound. They did better. But 2025, no, sir. 2025 was a disaster. And if they played the quarterbacks I just listed to in 2025, the numbers would have been dramatically worse than they were. And I just read them and they all sucked anyway. So we're just kidding ourselves here. So let's do this. None of us have any idea who he's going to hire. I think we all have our suspicions that it's going to be an underwhelming hire, maybe an in-house hire, and they're going to spin it as something great. If that's what happens, it ain't great. And don't kid yourself. You can kill me in the comments if you want, but you're wrong. Now, the more interesting question, when you try to figure out what the plan is to say, okay, so we had a transfer portal. There were some holes in that defense. I want to talk about whether or not USC filled the holes they needed to fill in the transfer portal first. And let's leave aside during that discussion why we think they did it the way we did it, because that's going to be topic number 3. I just want to set that aside, okay? I want to focus, first of all, on did they fill the holes they needed to fill, especially defensively, but we can talk offense too in the transfer portal, okay? Let's go group by group. I want to start with the defensive front, right? They pull in the defensive tackle from Michigan State. Hold on. I should have had this page open. I did.
Alex Van Sumeren.
Zariah from Penn.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so he's on board. They also pulled in an edge from Penn State who's been at Penn State forever. I think he needs a 7th-year waiver. Zariah Fisher. Has some athletic ability, Fisher. Hasn't been able to stay healthy. Hasn't been terribly productive. So if you've been following the Kurt Signetti production over potential, he doesn't meet that standard, but who knows? Sometimes guys with potential turn it on. Those are your guys. Is that enough? Is that what USC needed up front? Eric, let's start with you.
So what USC needs up front is a full year of a healthy Jakeem Stewart and Floyd Boucard, and big steps forward from Cam Crawford and Braylon Shelby. Like that's what they need to happen. Because if you're not going to go out and say who's the best defensive tackle, who's the best defensive end, Texas Tech went out last year, said, "Give me the two best defensive tackles, two best defensive ends in the portal." They did it again this year too, by the way, and sailed to the playoff this past year. Probably going to do it again next year. So did USC do that? No, no. What I think is interesting, what they did in the portal is they filled. I know you don't want to go position by position, but this is defensive line especially. They did fill holes. Yes, they addressed every single hole where you said, who do they need? Where do they have to get a guy in the portal? They went out and got a guy there. For the most part, it's not where, as a fan, you're looking top 5 guys. Okay, give me one of those guys. That's not what they did. Not what they did. But I think both those guys can play. I think they're going to need to get career years out of them to have again, what we're talking about, the production of a team that's playing for a playoff spot on the line. So did they get what they needed? Yeah, they needed a body on the inside, body on the outside. Absolutely. Those guys are going to come in as veteran leaders who will help the young guys in both of those rooms or that room together. I don't know that I'm going to sit here and say, yeah, they signed 2 first or second or third all conference team guys on the defensive line.
No, they didn't do that. We can say they didn't do it. And I'm saying that as somebody who actually likes both signings. But no, these are not all conference guys who picked up. But look, Van Sumeren's a tough guy. He's not huge, 300 pounds, but he's tough at the point of attack. He's not going to get driven back into the defensive backfield. He's a tough guy. He's not going to make a ton of plays. He's not Jakeem Stewart, right? Jakeem Stewart, if he stays healthy and puts it together, he's a guy who's going to blow up plays because of the ability he has. Van Sumeren's not going to do that. But I think Van Sumeren will play tough at the point of attack, and he'll be physical, and he'll probably inject some toughness and some leadership into a room that's pretty young. I'll take that, right? That's not bad. Fisher's probably the same way. I think Fisher may have more upside than Van Sumeren does, but whether we'll see that from him, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't been terribly productive at Penn State, but he's made some plays. I mean, if you just watch his like 1-minute highlight film from Penn State, it looks pretty good. So, Mark, if you go into next year with this defensive line group, the guys that are coming back, some young dudes, J.D. Abasiri, we didn't mention a second ago, but he's a guy who's flashed and will probably be better. If those guys stay healthy and take big steps forward, you certainly have enough 4- and 5-star recruits and guys who look like they should be able to play. But if those guys, if you don't get early production from the incoming freshmen like Winfield and Waveful and Tom, if you don't get huge steps forward from Jakeem and the kid from Florida,
Floyd Boucard,
then I don't know that this portal class is going to give you anything close to a top-notch defensive line, right?
well, I'm the sunshine pumper of the group, so I'm going to.
Away. I can't wait to hear it. I love it.
Look, we have to keep in mind, Jakeem Stewart played last year allegedly with a broken foot all season, and he still looked like one of the top guys in that room. Floyd Boucard, he was injured much of the season, but when he wasn't, you saw those elite feet that Coach Henderson bragged about going into the season. So I think there's good reason for all of us in this room to believe that, yes, Those two, as long as they're healthy, will take the next step in their development. And that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Can we hope and pray and assume that Braylon Shelby and Cam Crawford take the next step in their development as well? Sure. Why not? What I saw from Luke Wafel and from Jamion Winfield, and I get it, high school all-star game, they don't look like high school players. So if they can come in and they can support Jakeem and Floyd, yes. And I do like the Alex Van Sumeren. I think he is a better version of Gavin Meyer. And if you get Gavin Meyer type of energy and experience, that's a positive. I mean, just
That's the right. I think that's the right comp. I don't know if he's better or if he's the same kind of guy.
I
But
looked
you're
at his
right.
numbers, and again, I don't like to rely on stats, but when you look at his numbers,
No.
the guy had 50 plus tackles last year playing defensive tackle. So
A lot.
if the goal is, hey, let's find a run stuffer at defensive tackle, I think he checks that box. So did they fill the needs? Yes. Did they do it the same way they attacked high school recruiting? No. That's, I guess, where everybody's a little concerned. You know, you spend all that money on guys who haven't proven a damn thing rather than using that same type of energy with guys who have. Although, and that's why Texas Tech is signing the top two guys at their positions. Just the way it is.
Well, let's go from the resident sunshine pumper to the resident get off my lawn guy, Greg. And let me
Oh,
ask you
that was
something.
nasty, Chris.
Come on, it's not
That was
nasty.
so nasty.
Just saying what people think. They think similar things about me. It's fine. I still love you.
Okay.
Look, Greg, we saw from Boucard and from Jakeem Stewart, you saw two guys who, if they develop, usually make a big jump between that first year and the second year, especially if your first year is injury riddled. It would not be a shock if one or both of those guys become serious problems on the interior, right? I mean, you could see that happening. Luke Wafel and Jamion Winfield, it's hard. It's easier for an edge than a defensive tackle, but it's hard up front to come in as a true freshman and play well. Those guys already have the bodies of third-year college players. It's not crazy to think those guys could come in and give you good minutes and be solid, right? So maybe we have the dudes we need already, Greg. Do we have the dudes we need already? Those guys just have to take a little step forward?
You know, it goes back to culture. It goes back to what you know players and how they think in general. You can't be worried about if I don't play this guy, he's going to leave or whatever. Right now, they need players that when they go in the beginning of a game, play as hard as they do at the end of the game. And I think that a healthy Stewart is a All-America prospect in my mind. Ricard is could really be something special. And when I watched Wafel and Winfield, I said, these guys can play. These guys can play. If you can stand out in an all-star game, you're probably probably pretty good. I remember watching Reggie Bush when he stood out in the All-America game, and you said he's different. Wafel really reminds me of a Pete Carroll type of player. He's tough. What they're gonna have to figure out is what position he actually plays in. But he's gonna play. I won't shock me if he bypasses some of the others. They can't have the same performance that they had last year. And they know who these players are now. They know as much as we think we know. They see them in practice. We don't get to see them in practice. And probably if we saw them in practice, we would have said, we know this is what you could expect.
If Wafel doesn't jump some of the older guys in front of him, it's because those guys see him coming and they raise the level of their game.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest about something. Crawford and Shelby are both talented guys that a bunch of programs wanted because they have the physical skills you want. They haven't put it together. And frankly, I don't think their play on the field does not strike me as guys who want it badly enough. That's what I think. I could be wrong about that. That's what it looks like. Those guys may very well see Luke Wafel playing in that all-star game and see him on the practice field and decide, okay, it's time for me to get it together and get serious about things. And that does happen sometimes between a second year and a third year of a player, right? I mean, that can happen. And so maybe it'll be good that way too. Because I mean, look, I don't want to give up on Cam Crawford. He's flashed and he's got all kinds of ability. I want him to hold the edge and I want him to develop some pass rush moves. But that's a guy who, if you're saying, all right, who has potential on this defense to become an all Big Ten type talent based on the God-given gifts they have? Cam Crawford's one of the first dudes that comes out of your mouth, right? That is a guy who should be able to do it. And I thought he'd make a jump this past year. He didn't. Maybe he does this year. I don't know. But USC hasn't. Look, it's one thing to be where USC was 5-6 years ago on the defensive line and have a bunch of guys that you say that's a defensive line room for USC, right? These guys just don't have the talent. You're going to look at the guys in the room next year, like last year, and say they got all kinds of guys that look like they have the right bodies for this. Now, can they play? Mark, you want to say something?
If Cam Crawford can play 12 regular season games in 2026 like he did in the bowl game, you've got an All-American. I mean, he looked the part. He was finally doing everything you asked him to do. Contain the edge, get after the quarterback, just create chaos.
That's a guy.
Janae's in there too.
Yeah,
Janae's another guy.
Janae played well too.
Absolutely.
And he's flashed at other times. He's also a guy who, I mean, he looks like the Hulk. I mean, you say, okay, this guy has what you need to have in order to have the right ceiling, right? These guys all have the right ceilings. They got it. They have to. The guys that USC brought in are not guys who are high ceiling guys from my perspective. They are hardworking leadership guys who are going to instill some toughness and hopefully some discipline. And that's great because you need that.
There's
USC. It's the other guys on the team that have the ceilings.
For the defensive ends this offseason, there's one thing that stuck with me not the entire year, the last 5 games, whatever it was, right? Going into the Iowa game, there's a podcast done by a couple brothers that break down Iowa previous game, future game, right? That made it to the site, a lot of discussion about it. Anything that we have ever said negatively or constructive criticism, whatever, any of that sort of stuff about the defensive line this year, if they're not playing this 5-second clip from that podcast in the defensive line room all offseason, I don't know what they're doing. Referring to the defensive ends as the soft shoulder kings, right? Talking about containment, closing down the C gap, all of that sort of stuff, setting the edge. If that doesn't light you up to get going in that regard next year, I don't know what you have to hear. I don't know what has to happen, but that's something, Chris, you've been years and years now, right? That's not how you play the run off the edge.
I have to stop myself from mentioning it every 17 seconds because it drives me nuts. These guys come too far upfield. They leave a giant gap. They're not physical. They let guys cut right inside them. It happens over and over and over again. And I don't know why, because I know that Sean Nua doesn't want them to play that way. There's no way he does. There's no way Dan Lin wanted them to play that way. They look to me like guys who are interested in getting upfield, because if you get upfield, you have a chance to get sacks, and sacks are what matter. Well, yeah, but when you're the 119th team in rush defense, playing some freaking rush defense matters too, fellas. I mean, they have to be football players this coming year instead of just big, fast, great body dudes who look like they should be good. They have to be football players, and they weren't last year. Not consistently. At times they were, but not consistently.
You know, Chris, I think what has to be considered from my perspective is that what system of defense are they going to run? If you have a new defensive coordinator, it's going to be his system. Some players fit in better in different systems. Maybe for these players that flashed at some degree, the system, I don't want to say stopped them from being what we all think they could be, but the system could change. Now, the question is what does Lincoln Riley say about the system? And when they pick, so let's just suppose they pick, just for the sake of argument, they pick Henderson. Let's just say they pick Henderson. How much will he change the system that was in place? And he may say to himself, you know what? If we were in this system, I know that a couple of these guys. Now, one of the biggest things to me is when I look at Wayful, Winfield, and of course Tom from Mater Dei. These are players that come in with an attitude. They play like they're football players.
Yeah.
And my feeling is they need to make a decision on the team, but specifically in that front group on defense. Look, if you don't put it out every play, I hate to put it this way, then go somewhere else and play if you just can't be part of the team and do what we ask you to do. Because even if you don't say it, you can say it by just saying, I'm not playing him. It's just that simple. Every player wants to play. And let me tell you something, they all want to play. I don't get turned on too much by SC's portal transfers. I'll be honest with you. They've had some good ones. Obviously, Caleb Williams was a good one. The running back transfer from Oregon was a good player. They've had some good
They've
ones.
had a few good running back transfer.
Yeah. But yeah, and no
Batted
question about
1,000. They batted 1,000 at running back.
Okay, nobody's going to argue that's all true. But just because a player's coming from Penn State or they're coming from other high-known places, that doesn't mean that they're good. If they were good, they wouldn't be probably in the portal to begin with. But the problem is you have to find players that somehow are nuggets that you overlooked or what have you. I don't think SC has done that. It's not that I don't think they're trying, but they haven't worked out well. We've had players from Alabama, you say, oh, we got one from Alabama. He must really be good because he was in Alabama. And then when we see them play, or why they don't play. I mean, I was watching with some interest, watching Bear Alexander playing for Oregon and saying, well, how is he different than he was at Alabama or how he was at SC and all that sort of stuff. And then you go, wait a minute. These three players that are coming as freshmen, combined with the other two that we talked about, that's going to be a solid group. That's going to be a solid group because physically they look like they can play and their enthusiasm is exactly what you want to see. So it's really going to be up to the coaches to say, I'm not worried about who's going to leave. We got to win now, and we got to do with the players that, I can't make everybody happy. The only thing that makes everybody happy is if we win most of the time.
USC's done the anti-Signetti in the portal in the sense that they've gone after potential rather than production for the most part, with guys like John Jarrett and Bear Alexander and the like. I don't have a problem doing that. I mean, if you pull in a couple of guys like that and they play close to their potential, then you have a coup. But we've spent too much time on that group if we're going to talk about everybody. So we're going to move on. I'm going to skip linebacker for a second because I'm not ready to deal with it yet. I do want to talk about the secondary because I actually, you have a guy in Jontez Williams from Iowa State who had an ACL injury during the season last year. You never know how long it's going to take him to come back to full speed. If he comes back to full speed, that guy looks like an absolute no-brainer lockdown corner for you, right? I mean, this guy's Mecky Blackman if he's healthy, right? McKinney, help me out.
Yeah. Yeah, if he comes back fully healthy, he's in the running for one of the best corners in the conference. Yes, he has been the best Big 12 corner. He is a set it and forget it at corner kind of player. That's it. Yes, you have locked in a starter and one of your better defensive players if he is back to full health.
He's physical. He's a good tackler. He's a guy who you can trust in man coverage. He was well coached by a coach who has a defense where the guys do what they're supposed to do. He's an absolute no-brainer if he's healthy. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to have Williams because look, even if he's not healthy, he's a guy you want in your cornerback room, right? Even if he's playing at 80%, USC has a ton of really talented corners, especially when you talk about Hill and Sermons and these guys. I mean, do I want Jontez Williams practicing with those guys, lifting with them, talking to them in the film room? Yeah, I do. I mean, that's that's a no-brainer. So that's a pretty exciting addition. Nothing at safety, guys. Are we worried about that? Do we feel comfortable with the safety room next year? Mark, do you feel comfortable with the safeties we have coming back?
No. I'd like to add somebody like a Coy Parrish. Wouldn't have a problem with that.
Everybody wants to add Coy Parrish, including the Detroit Lions.
So look, that's one of the positions where I don't think they've filled their needs. Whether that's I don't know what their role is for Carrington Pierce. If he's going to be a safety, I don't know. But it couldn't have it would not have hurt the room to bring in somebody like and I know there's not a lot of them out there, but can you recreate another Bishop Fitzgerald for one more year?
What if they move Alex? Look, Alex Graham could play safety.
Graham's got to come back. Graham and Reddick
first though.
Right. Graham and Reddick are going to be on the field, I'd assume. And so you got to bring Alex Graham back, D. Reddick. One of them can play safety. One of them can play nickel. You got Prophet Brown play nickel. They could both play safe. Like if you love those guys, which the USC coaches clearly love both of those guys, and they're both back, I think they play this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you're looking at is Urlacher fast enough to play there? I think the kid is a football player, right? He wants to run around and tackle people. Is he fast enough? We'll see, but certainly there are teams USC plays against the Big Ten don't throw the ball very well. That's a guy that you could put on the field and feel good about it, I think. Christian Pierce, despite the fact that I had to beat up on him after the bowl game, is a guy that we've all liked for a long time, right? He can run, he can hit. He'll probably take another step forward this year with the experience. So I'm with you, Mark, in that they don't have a lot of proven guys back there. But I wonder whether safety is a position where if you can get Parrish, you get Parrish. But that goes for every program in the country. That guy is a stud. But if you don't have the money to pay him in light of what you're paying the incoming freshman, then maybe safety's a position where they're okay. It wouldn't surprise me if the safeties play all right this year, especially with Doug Bell, who I think is
that was my whole thing earlier. Is like you went in for a penny with the high school recruiting class. Why are you going in for a half a penny with your transfer portal class?
Because there are no more pennies.
You're allowed. I'm sorry?
Because the pennies are all gone. That's why. You gave most of your pennies to Luke Wayful and guys like that. That's why.
That was money well spent. But again, you got to have some in reserve for the holes you had to fill.
Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. We were talking about whether or not USC needed to go get a number one wide receiver. There's a ton of wide receiver talent on the team, most of it unproven. I mean, almost all of it unproven, other than Tinook Hines, who I think has showed us enough. You feel comfortable saying, yeah, that guy's going to be a solid player next year. They go out and they get Terrell Anderson from North Carolina State. He wasn't one of the two big names in the portal, but I don't know, guys. He has been pretty productive, and his highlight film looks pretty good. That looks like a good pickup to me. Greg, have you seen anything from Terrell Anderson? What do you think of this kid?
Well, I think that when SC goes after a receiver, they're usually pretty good. Lincoln Riley certainly knows his quarterbacks. He certainly understands his receivers. I could say that when he has the tight ends that he feels comfortable with, he'll throw it to him and he'll put him in the game. So in terms of this kid coming from North Carolina State, I need to see more film of him. I know that, when people show highlight films, that's why they call them highlight films, because they're going to show you all the things they do well. I'll wait and see. I think he's probably going to be a decent player, maybe a really good player. But that's why I wish that I could see a lot of spring ball so you could really get an idea.
Yeah.
A better idea.
Yeah, you never know how a guy's going to transition. Or I tend to agree with you. Look, he's a guy that had, 700, 800 yards receiving last year. He's got good size, moves pretty well. And I'm with you. When Lincoln Riley pulls a running back or a quarterback or a wide receiver out of the portal, I usually say, okay. I mean, that's his expertise. He's pulling those guys in. I feel pretty good about it. So that's probably a good addition. Nothing on the interior offensive line. Are we worried about that? Eric, is that a problem, or do we think that some of these young guys probably are ready to step in and play next year?
I think that they have enough to be okay. The good news is that you don't have to worry about an offensive line injury for like 4 years based on the averages of what happened to USC this year. So should have great help there coming up for the next couple of years. Uh, no, it's a worry. It's a worry. You have to be right on every one of those guys. If Alani Noah's not back, you have to be right on all of them. And that's hard to do when you haven't seen a whole lot of them. Hayden Dreer played left guard in the bowl game, was fine, but that's tough. Justin Tonu played last year bowl game and struggled, but like it was enough to be like I think he's probably okay there. I think Hayden Dreer is probably okay on the interior if you have to play him there this year. It's also a Lincoln Riley offense can move the ball if you give him C work on the offensive line. Like that's sort of how it's set up. Like it'd be great. It'd be great to have 5 fifth-year seniors who are all conference guys. He just needs some okay college linemen to line up every play, and you're okay on offense. So I think they have enough to get there. Right? You'd love a guy, a third-year starter coming back to play guard for you. I mean, that would be nice. If you could just go and
Yeah.
cherry pick anybody out of the portal.
But if who you can get out of the portal, you're not going after an elite interior guy and paying him a lot of money. So if what you get out of the portal is a DJ Wingfield or John Ray Reed, and you
That
look
you
at
kind of have to guarantee start time, even if it doesn't work out, and you got to just smush him in there and all that stuff. Like, I don't know.
and if you're
Elijah
talking
Page
about,
came
look,
back. That's you
if
got
you're talking about
pieces.
right, you're not talking about left tackle or center. You're talking about right guard. Probably the easiest position to play in the offensive line. It wouldn't shock me if you put Colajay or Pepe at that spot next year and they play pretty well. Those are guys who are already very physically developed. They play with attitude. They come from a high school that coaches you up really, really well. I think that's the whole point of the high school is to play football. So if you go to IMG, you're getting well coached. I I'm not convinced you're not better off playing one of those guys if Treater can't do it, or if one of these other young guys that you already have in the program. I could. I mean, I wouldn't put Pepe at left tackle next year and say I feel good about that. I would not feel good about that. But if you said Kobe Pepe is going to play 1 year at right guard before bumping out to tackle, I'd say, yeah, he probably can do that, right? He's got all the physical gifts and he's playing a much easier position. Um, Something like that may I mean I think look, I think they're going to be all right on the offensive line if the guys stay relatively healthy, which is a big if after last year. But if I think they're well coached. They have enough bodies. You're going to be really good on the left side of that line with Page and Raymond. That's a really good start. I mean, those guys next year are going to be an elite tandem. I think Justin T is going to make a move. It's hard to play that early as a tackle, but when you saw from Page, where he went from his first year as a starter, where he was getting abused by people, to where he was last year before he gets hurt, I think Justin T is going to make a jump. I think they're all right up front. I think. Never know. But I don't think they're all right at linebacker, so we're going to talk about it now. Listen, guys, they bring in Devin Bryant from Washington. A lot of the fans on the message board didn't like that. They were lighting into him. Actually, I'm happy to have him. I'm not saying Devin Bryant is a future first or second round pick. I don't think that's true. But he was a solid player at Washington. He played linebacker the way linebackers are supposed to play it. He runs downhill and he hits people. He fills gaps. Um, I'm happy they got him. He's not Chris Claiborne, but I don't think anybody Devin Bryant doesn't think he's Chris Claiborne. Right? He is a quality football player who is a good addition to that room. You can't stop there, guys. You can't stop there unless you think Talanoa Ely as a true freshman is going to come in and give you 50 good snaps a game, which that's really hard to do at that position, right? It's one thing to come in as an edge and rush the passer on third down. Lots of guys can do that. You go look at the freshman edges over the last 15 years. Almost every year you got a guy who's getting 6, 7, 8 sacks as a freshman edge. You can do that. Luke Wafel will do that probably this year. But Greg, an inside linebacker as a true freshman, I mean, there is so much you have to read, so much you have to understand, including all of the assignments of all of the dudes in front of you. So you can't count on Ely as a freshman, right? And that means you're counting on Devin Bryant and the guys you have coming back from last year. And I can't see that as anything but an unmitigated disaster. Please talk me off the ledge, because that looks like it looks like all the other stuff we talked about in the transfer portal. I'm good with all of it. I can see an argument for all of it. I don't see an argument for this.
You know, I agree with you. I think it's a situation where I look at players and I see how they behave violently and attacking and knowing where to go and not hesitating a step. And before you know it, when you hesitate a step, you got somebody who's 300 pounds in your face. And if you take enough hits, you know what, you start worrying about other things besides stopping a play. You start think about surviving. You know, again, I hate to say this, but I think if the system changes somewhat, it probably will help these guys because the new the defensive coordinator is going to know at some point whether they're a return, somebody's already on the staff or somebody new, just what these players are capable of doing. You can look, the system that they ran, it looked like everyone's looking for a unique system. I understand that, but sometimes you just have to line it up in something that's not unique, but something that says you're either a football player or you're not a football player. Either you can stop the rush or you don't stop the rush. And it's the linebacking core, unfortunately, left me especially just scratching my head going, what are they thinking? They've got to stop doing that. They need to get in there, take a step up towards the line of scrimmage and just say, if I'm going to do something wrong, I'm going to do it as hard as I can and as quick as I can and let the chips fall where they may.
There is a possibility here that the problem was Denton Lynn asking his young linebackers to do something they couldn't do. Right?
Exactly.
And he was expecting them to read far too much and trying to read all the things he wanted them to read mostly involved them standing around for 2 seconds until they caught a 330-pounder in their grill. And that happened over and over again all year, and Denton Lynn may have been too stubborn to fix it. Maybe the next defense coordinator will not, and Desmond Stevens, who has talent, he is big enough to play that position. He is fast enough to play that position. He's not a bad tackler. Maybe with a different scheme where you're telling him, look, if they're doubling on that 5 technique, and this guy's pulling, you fly downhill and hit somebody in the face, and maybe he does it right. I mean, so this may be a Denton Lynn problem. But boy, we're putting a lot of eggs in the Denton Lynn as a bad coach basket here because the linebacker play was as bad last year as anything I've ever seen at USC.
You know, I don't think Denton Lynn was is a bad coach at all. I think he's probably a pretty good coach, and you know he's trying to institute what he thinks is a good system. And it's I think you've mentioned this before. You know, Denton Lynn had success at UCLA. He had some good players there, and he had some good things that happened at SC. But again, you go back to what you said about, defending the rush. That's I can't get into defending him on that one. He might be a better pro coach or a better college coach down the road than he was when he was at SC. And if they hire a veteran defensive coordinator, a respectful one, I'm going to expect a better outcome. That's just my opinion.
20 years ago, there were a whole bunch of West Coast offenses in college football and a bunch of quarterbacks who couldn't understand that system until they were fifth-year seniors, and all of a sudden they played really well. You say, hey, see, the system's great. You just have to have the players do it. It may be that Lynn was asking too much of these guys, and so maybe they can play if the system is simplified. But boy, I hope so, because if you have just a small step forward next year based on last year's play, you still have a defense that can't stop anybody halfway decent. That's just the truth, because they can't. The run defense, if your run defense is one of the worst in the country, your defense is going to be bad. There's no way to be a good defense and be one of the worst run defenses in the country. It's impossible. Everybody's playing on 2nd and 3. Everybody, I mean, if it's 1st and 10, 2nd and 3, first down, 2nd and 4, first down, you can't play defense like that. You have to get guys behind the sticks. That means you have to be able to stop a halfback from getting 7 yards downfield. Look, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm mad about it because I just think what we saw last year was crazy, and to the extent that Lincoln says, let's give it another go, that strikes me as too much of a Alex will probably figure it out this year kind of decision, and I'm not willing to trust him yet. Okay,
I still
guys.
so
No,
Talanoa Ely is a guy I wouldn't totally throw him out as like can't do it. Like the guy I looked at, Mason Posa last year at Wisconsin, true freshman this past year, didn't start getting snaps till like halfway through the year, ended up a freshman All-America discussion. They had Wisconsin had a run of like Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Indiana, Illinois. How about that 5-game run for him? He had 13 tackles, 11 tackles, 12 like figured it out. Click for him. True freshman. Can happen in the Big Ten. Can happen. Yeah. So he's a guy where he's been eyeing that for a while, right? He's been eyeing like how do I get on the field for a while? How do I make an impact right away? Of all the linebackers they've brought in, like they brought in a lot of linebackers where you thought that's going to take a bit. It's going to take a little bit, size wise, whoever they played against, all of that sort of stuff. Ely's a guy where I think he can do some stuff quickly. He's not coming out starting game 1 and 15 tackles and what I mean maybe whoever the high school team that they're playing games 1, 2, and 3 this season and for the future. But I think he's a guy who could play. I think he's a guy that can bring something to that room.
That's fair. Look, there are freshmen who play quarterback and play it well, left tackle and play it well. It's possible to play inside linebackers, a true freshman play it well. It's just really hard and usually don't expect it. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I disagree. You knew your biggest need going into this offseason. I mean, it's not even a question. If you had to rank it 1 through 11, you can go out and get the best 11 players at each position, at each respective position. Linebacker was number 1. And while this has nothing to do with Devin Bryant, this has nothing to do with Talanoa Ely or Taylor Johnson or Sean Scott or anybody who's returning to USC. You had an opportunity to go out there, spend a little bit of coin on a top linebacker, a linebacker who's right now like Cade Uluave. Michigan wants him. Brigham Young wants him. USC doesn't want to doesn't want to rock the boat too heavily. You need to go. You have to show your fan base we're willing to spend money on high school talent potential, and we're going to do the same thing, filling those holes where we need it. And USC is doing the exact opposite of that. They're getting good players, but they're not showing everybody we're all in.
If you had a list of the 11, if you had a list of the 11 biggest needs for USC next year, 1 through 11 on my list would have been linebacker. That's how.
Yeah, I don't think you disagree.
Yeah,
I don't think you disagree with me, Mark. I think Talanoa is good. I don't think he's the answer. And I was gonna say like nothing would have gotten the fans on your side more. You could have gone in the year without a defensive coordinator. Nothing would have got them on your side more than going out and saying, who's the best linebacker in the portal? We're gonna get him. We're gonna get him. Whoever it ends up being, we're gonna get that guy and make a statement about that. That would have been that would have carried your portal off season. Absolutely. Could have done anything else.
That's it. I agree. Absolutely. We agree, Eric. Absolutely.
Yeah, and what that tells me, guys, is that USC doesn't expect to be competing for a Big Ten championship next year, because you don't compete with this roster and this transfer portal class next year. It tells me that we already know from what Chad Bowden was apparently telling key members of this incoming recruiting class that USC didn't expect to be a great team in 2025. He said 8, 4, 9, and 3. Okay, well, he nailed that. But I think if you look at if USC thought they could compete for a conference title and a playoff berth in 2026 against that brutal schedule they had, then they probably would have spent more money in the transfer portal and picked up some guys. I think they're playing the long game, but if you're a USC fan, I think what that means is that you have to sit through another year of mediocrity, and everybody at USC not only knows that's what you're going to do, but that was actually the plan. I mean, I think that's what's going on. That's kind of a bitter pill to swallow in year 5.
If that's the truth, I agree
If
with
that's
you.
the truth, I'm speculating. I'm
What
just
I will
saying.
say is, if they don't make the playoffs next year, I don't see Lincoln Riley continuing as the head coach, in my opinion. I hope he
That's what.
succeeds, but I don't see it.
But Greg, if that's the way Jen Cohen saw it, if that's the way Chad Bowden saw it, do you think that they would have picked up Devin Bryant as their only linebacker in the transfer portal this year? They know they are not anywhere close to being where they need to be at that position. They have to know that.
No, the
Uh,
bigger question, Chris, the bigger question is if that's going to be, we're looking forward to 2027, and maybe this sets us up for the next segment. Why are we all in with Jade Mayava rather than looking at the future with Husan Longstreet? It just seems like there's some inconsistencies with whatever their
Because
strategy
you can't win 3 games in 26 and say, yeah, but wait until 27.
You
Like
still need 8 or 9. You still need eight or
You can
nine.
win 8 and win. You can say, well, let's win 8 and wait till 2027.
I'm
no,
not saying
nobody's gonna love that.
I'm not saying that's what I would have done. I'm speculating because otherwise the transfer portal recruiting makes zero sense to me.
You
It
know
makes
what?
no
I'm
sense.
going to tell you something. Maybe it's because I'm an old man, but I'm going to tell you this: 8-4 at USC is not a great season at all.
We're all agreed on that.
9-3 maybe is okay if you go to the playoffs, right? But most SC fans would say, at least 10 wins. And the bigger the playoff field gets, the more it says, now what's your excuse? The playoff is bigger. My feeling is, some of these records are good at other places. I am not at all pleased with what happened this year, but I'll say, okay, you showed progress. You got to 9 wins. You couldn't beat TCU in a bowl game really without their star quarterback. Okay, I can sit there and say it happens, but it happens too often with Lincoln Riley. And then I will say this: next year is a year that, look, going into the season number 5, if you can't cut it after 5 seasons, I don't care about the big, magnificent football building. I don't, because that doesn't decide whether you go to the playoffs. The building will shine on some players, and they'll go, "Oh, I want to go to SC because I want to be in that building." Most of your great players say, "I want to win a national championship and go to the NFL." That's what their goal is.
We're all on the same, but look, I think everybody on this show is on the same program as you, Greg. My view would be if USC doesn't make the playoff this coming year, I would get a new head coach. Now, maybe if you lose a couple of really close games to Indiana and Oregon, that makes you 9-3 and you don't get in, then maybe I don't. But that's because I think 5 years in, you have to be better than that. I'm just suggesting that if Lincoln Riley thought I have to make the playoff this year against that schedule, he would have gone in and found a way to get $1.5 million for that Cal linebacker. That's all I'm saying. He's not recruiting in the portal like he thinks his job is on the line in 2026. Maybe he's wrong, but this is not a class you put together if you think we have to win right now. It's just not.
When you say class, what class are you referring
The
to?
portal class. Obviously,
Oh,
the
the portal
freshman
class.
class is
Okay.
fantastic, but you don't recruit a freshman class and expect those guys to get you to 10-2 if they're getting all the snaps. So you look at the roster holes you have and you say, okay, if I have to win this year, I need that Cal linebacker. I gotta have that guy, right? I need a proven edge rusher, not a guy who's played at Penn State a bunch of years and every once in a while flash but couldn't really be productive. No, I have to get a linebacker and I have to get an edge rusher. I have to have those two things. if I'm required to win in 2026 to save my job. And he didn't go out and get guys like that. That tells me either he's delusional about his roster, or he's delusional about his job, or he knows darn well that as long as they play okay in 2026, he's coming back. And I'm willing to bet it's number 3.
You think that if he plays, what is okay?
I think if they have a season like this past season, he survives to 2027, and I think all the pressure in the world is on him that year. If you can't win in year 3 of Jakeem and Boucard, and year 2 of Wafel and Winfield and Talanoa, if you can't win then you're out. That's what I think. But look, I'm speculating. It's just I don't understand the transfer portal decisions if USC thinks they have to go 10-2 and make the playoff in 2026. They don't have a defense to go 10-2 against that schedule in 2026. They don't, unless you're expecting guys to come in and be studs as true freshmen, and guys who played awful last year to all of a sudden be like high quality starters. And how can you expect that? That doesn't make any sense.
And no injuries. And no injury, right? You're looking at a here's the completely healthy roster, not who's number 4 at this spot who needs to make a play, at Indiana next fall.
Yeah. I just don't see it. This looks to me like an 8-4, maybe 9-3 roster, and that's okay if you think that USC couldn't compete for a playoff spot this year at all, no matter what they did in the portal. That's not true. If USC landed 2 stud linebackers and a stud pass rusher in the portal this year, they would be a playoff team this year. They would be, because the offense is going to score a lot of points. It's going to score a lot of points. And if you have your lockdown corner at one spot and the young guys at the other spot, that's a team that could make the playoff. And I thought that's what they were going to do, and they didn't do it. They didn't really try, as best I can tell. So either they don't care about success, or they've just decided, nope, we're putting all our chips on 2027.
Bad idea.
I don't know, but I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. I don't want to spend another year watching teams run the ball for 8 yards a pop every first down. I don't want to watch that anymore. I'm tired of watching that.
I can tell you right now, if they don't go to the playoffs next year, and things are the way they have been, they're going to lose season ticket holders, and that'll get their attention. And it should.
Yeah, I don't know.
Here's the thing about season ticket holders. You know what? And this really, in my opinion, yeah, winning brings the fans out. I think more and more fans they're getting priced out as it is. They're willing to sit home, watch it on their 70-inch.
Exactly.
It's more cost effective, a lot less frustrating.
You know how you sell a lot of season tickets?
Win
You play
games.
teams like Michigan at home and let their fans buy up a bunch of tickets and then sell the other 6. So I don't know. Okay, let's do this. Let's spend just a couple more minutes because we're starting to run long. We talked about the All-American Bowl performances by Luke Wafel. We talked about Jamie Winfield. Those guys look like future special players. Let's just real quickly, a couple of other guys who stood out, because I think there were some other USC guys that looked really good in those practice sessions in that game. Eric, give me a name, and then I'll let the other guys jump in and give me a name if they want.
Yeah, it's hard to just pick one. Like
you always fight on this.
No. It's not a comment about me. It's a comment about the guys that were down there. It used to be that, right? USC used to send. There were 9 guys at these games, and that's all you heard all week. It feels like it's been a long time since and the importance of these games and how you look forward to them, and the fact that they're right there at the end of kind of that recruiting push into February, like all that's gone, all that's changed. These guys are already enrolled at school now and going down to play in these games. But there were a lot. So I'm gonna go Caden Dixon-Wyatt, the wide receiver, because a late ad, right? A guy where when he came into the class, you thought, really? Not because of the talent, but just because there's so many receivers already in that class. Like, do you need to add another one? And then he goes down there and plays that way, and you go, "Oh, okay." Not like
Yeah.
not only does that start to make sense, but now when you're talking about who are the freshman receivers who can come in and play right away, like Booby Feaster was always a guy, Trent Mosley was always a guy. Caden Diggs-Wyatt's going to come in, and I'm not going to say for sure he's going to play right away, but he's in that group now of can you come in and can you contribute right away. Like we saw Corey Sims last year carve out a special team spot, which is always important as a freshman. Like you just want to be on the field. You want to be on the field. And so yeah, Caden Diggs-Wyatt is absolutely put himself in that conversation, either on offense, special teams, somewhere, but he can do something right now.
It'd be surprising if he does it, if he's not in the rotation along with Feaster and Mosley, right? And you look at it and say, wow, that's a lot of freshmen you expect to be on the field, but I think all three of those guys probably have to get on the field. Mark, anybody jump out at you that we should have mentioned but haven't from the All-American game?
It's low hanging fruit, but Vlad Diakonov had a fantastic week of practice.
Yeah.
And to the point where, when you're giving superlatives of, he was one of the only guys who was able to contain Luke Wafel. You're like, okay, well, I know what Luke Wafel was doing to everybody else. So if Vlad was able to get, 50% win, 50% loss, that's huge. You take that. And I also liked his attitude, how he approached practice during the week. Everybody knows he's coming to USC to play tackle, but he jumped into the rotation to play guard just because he wanted to get as many reps as possible. So you like that type of work ethic. So yeah, give me a 6'7" offensive lineman with arms and good footwork and is willing to do what's asked of him and can compete against some of the best edge rushers out there. It's a good take.
Yeah, you look at the offensive line class that's coming in, and even if it was only Vlad the Impaler, College, and Pepe, even if those were your only three guys, you would say, okay, like that's three guys that might be NFL players. But obviously it's a deep class. But with those three at the top, it's pretty wild just how well they recruited there this year.
Yeah, and it's nice that he finally got his fourth star, but look, people should remember he was a 3-star when USC picked him up. So
Yeah, he was one of those projects that everybody in the message board says, why are we picking up 3-star guys? Well, because they look like that. That's why.
precise.
Hey, Greg, doesn't have to be from the All-American game. Just let's close it out with this topic out with this. Give me one other incoming freshman that you think people should keep an eye on, that you think might get on the field and actually really surprise people.
I don't know if I don't know if there's really surprises because with this recruiting class, so many of the players were pretty well known. I don't know. I think Mosley is somebody that should be really taken seriously. He knows how to play, comes from an athletic background. He's gotten better and better and better and better. Carson Palmer loved him, thought he was really great. And I'm sure when Carson Palmer says a few things, they're going to listen to what he says. And I'm talking about coaches at USC. And if they don't, who knows? Maybe someday Carson Palmer will be the head coach at USC. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Mosley. The thing was that guy just went through. I mean, I don't know that he was putting up big numbers early in the year, but you watched his run through the playoffs. He was killing people
Dynamite.
and playing the best teams you can find in California, and he's just lighting them up. He's not very big. I don't think he's very fast, although I think he's pretty quick. But man, if that guy's not ready to step in and play, I'll be stunned. Right? That's a guy who is polished and knows what he's doing.
Agree.
Okay, so let's close it out with this college football playoff. Apparently, Miami did belong in there. Who knew? It turns out that the committee wasn't crazy. They're actually pretty good. Comment on two teams. One, just for fun. The Oregon Ducks once again go out and get utterly humiliated, like completely beat down, just in like really embarrassing fact. They're taking Oklahoma USC Orange Bowl beatings now on a regular basis, which is crazy. but they did it. And let me just ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, was that a 12 or 13 in terms of fun to watch? I mean, thank you. Dan Lanning, thank you. Thank you for what you gave me, because I was kind of bummed out. And then I watched that and it just made me feel good about life. Like, you know what? The world's not such a bad place.
It made me a little bit of that was Indiana has not been on the USC schedule for 2 years with things on the line, and that's okay for this year.
This
I
is
did not need to see that this year.
this was the next point. Indiana. I don't know that I've ever seen a more impressive coaching job than what we've seen over the last 2 years from Kurt Signetti. I
No,
mean, guys, extraordinary.
I'm going to say this, Chris. When I watched Miami and I watched Indiana, and I'll be honest with you, I'm rooting for Indiana. I so
Oh, me
appreciate
too.
the way they were coached. I saw Indiana in the Rose Bowl in 67, Simpson's junior year, and I go, they waited so long. But here's the message that I took from both those teams. They're in the national championship game. The coaching of Indiana is what, second year, right? With Signetti. And say what you want about Cristobal, but he's got him there. He's got him there, and not in a little longer period of time, maybe. I don't know. But then I look at USC and I go, we're USC. We are SC. And we're going into the fifth year with no playoff, appearances. And I'm looking at these other two teams, and I'm going, what do they know that USC doesn't know? Or what are they doing right that SC needs to do righter?
Well, they play run
That's right.
defense
Yeah,
at
yeah,
Indiana.
exactly.
That's one
No,
thing to do.
absolutely right. 100%. But I'm looking at that and I'm going, when you start comparing where is SC at, where should they be, it doesn't make any difference whether they have an All-American. SC has an All-America quarterback for me. It doesn't make any difference if they, throw for 800 passing yards. In the end, how successful was your team? And I think Indiana and Miami is a message to everyone that if you're not going to say you can't start getting into it in your third year as a head coach and your expectations of the playoffs, you got some serious thinking to revise, in my opinion.
My standard for great coaches has always been the Bill Snyder standard, which is, can you go somewhere that's terrible and turn them into an elite program that can beat the best teams in the country? Snyder could do that at Kansas State. Almost nobody else can do that, right? What Signetti's done is more impressive than that. It's more impressive than it's only 2 years, right? It's hard to maintain. So we'll see what happens over the next 3, 4, 5 years. But if you're just talking about his 2 year performance, it's more impressive than anything Urban Meyer's ever done, anything Nick Saban's ever done, anything Pete Carroll's ever done, anything that Bear Bryant has ever done. You're talking about a guy who takes over a program that hasn't won a thing since 1967. They're terrible. Every year, terrible. And they're not only a good team, they are humiliating Alabama on the biggest stage. We're humiliating them, toying with them. They absolutely annihilate an Oregon team that spent $37 billion to build that roster, and they just treat them like a kids team. It's a father-son game with the dads against 8-year-olds in Pop Warner, and they just do whatever they want. It's wild what he's done. That guy, I don't know if he can keep it up. I don't know that anybody could keep up that level of play forever. But Kurt Signetti is a different kind of dude. That is wild what he's been able to do with that program.
It's going to be interesting when you lose the James Madison guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you lose and you start really hearing from Nick Marsh, I think, is a perfect example. Like those kind of guys, when you win like that and you attract people that are attracted to winning, you are also going to attract guys who don't understand what it takes to win. They like the idea of it, but he's going to have to be, I'm not saying he can't be, he's going to have to be even better in terms of separating who you can bring into that locker room and who you can't, and who's there to work and who understands what it takes to get there. Because you had that core from James Madison, coaches and players, where you took everybody that had built that program into a great program to Indiana. I think it's somehow, I know it's going to sound dumb, but it's going to be harder now to keep it going compared to actually building it.
Nick Saban talked about that the other day about how, at first at Alabama, you had guys coming to Alabama because they had something to prove. And then after a while, you have guys coming to Alabama because what Alabama can do for them. So it does change, Mark.
I was going to let everybody know that the year before Signetti took over at Indiana, they went 3-9.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were 2-10 in 2021. I mean, what he has done there is we've all seen USC at its best. This Indiana team right now looks like that Pete Carroll program around 2004 through 2008, where it's like, they've already won the game. The things they're doing to other teams, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
It's extraordinary, and I suspect they're going to take it to Miami and beat them down too. I hope they do. I mean, it's such a great story. I would hate for them to go out and turn the ball over 4 times and lose, but
And that's something they don't make mistakes.
No, they
They've got
don't.
offensive linemen running down the field, recovering fumbles because the ref hasn't blown the whistle yet.
No,
These
they're
guys, they're fun to watch. That
so
I
disciplined. They're
want
so
real
tough.
to look like Indiana football. Did I just
Yeah,
say that?
no, it's amazing. Uh, okay, guys, we've gone too long. That's it. That's all we're going to talk about. Maybe next week we'll be able to talk about a defensive coordinator hire. Don't know that. Maybe we will. If not, maybe we'll spend an hour talking about how good Indiana is. Until then, everybody, appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next week. Fight on.